Alright folks, thanks for tuning in. Today is not Xserve related. Today is all about the Mac Pro, specifically the 4,1 and 5,1 Mac Pro. A friend of mine had the graphics card on his Mac Pro die, and unfortunately he is in Florida and I am not. So the new card that he needs requires more power. I tried to find an identical card to what he had with dual 6-pin power input, couldn't find it, so I had to go with a card that also has an 8-pin input. Now I am of the belief that converting an 8-pin to a mini 6-pin to hook it up to the board, actually might have one here, see if I can get this in focus. You got your mini 6-pin that goes to the Mac Pro logic board, and you got your 8-pin that goes to the power of the graphics card. I believe that using such a conversion is a bad idea because of the potential power draw 8 pins can put on your board. So I need to do a Pixlas mod for him. That involves me modifying the power supply, splicing in another cable to feed the power supply directly. The graphics card directly from the power supply. Now, since I am in a different state and he cannot do this himself, he sent me money to buy the graphics card for him. He sent me money to buy a power supply for him, and I'm going to put this all together, ship it to him. He's going to follow the guide that I wrote for the TheHouseOfMoth blog to put it all back together, and then send me his current power supply to keep for parts. I thought that was a good deal since I have Mac Pro enclosures stacking up to the ceiling with no power supplies for them. So, good deal. Now, first what we need, of course, to do this is a power supply. I got this from eBay. Well packaged. Unknown seller. This is not from someone on Facebook or anything. Whew, that is in there. So here we have our power supply. Looking good. The seller said it was tested, but of course we're gonna test it ourselves as well. By the way, apologies, I do not have my usual lapel mic because it died. And here we have let me see, AMD Radeon Sapphire HD. So this is slightly more powerful than the card my friend currently has, so it'll get the job done. A lot of Final Cut Pro work, but as you can see, one 6-pin, one 8-pin, and this is the whole reason we're doing this modification. So I will be following the guide that I wrote for my blog down to the letter. So some people prefer this in written format, others in video. I'll try to do as much as I can in the video itself, but this video will be a companion to the blog article, so make sure you read that still. Now before we start hacking away at this, of course I need to make sure this works. So let me set up a Mac Pro. I have a 4,1 here that I use for testing. Plug this in, plug in the card. I have the 2 cables for it. Now just to boot up and start the operating system, this will get the job done. The problem and the reason that I'm doing the Pixlas mod is that once you really start putting a load on these cards, that 8-pin port might require more power than the board can deliver. Depending on who you ask, People say, oh, I've been using this for years. I push it as hard as I can. No issue, no problem. And that's great. But I'm not going to go that route. I'm doing the mod. So whether he's using this card for the next 10 years, or he decides to put in a NVIDIA Titan, or AMD, what is it, Radeon 7, whatever is out now, he will be covered with the Pixlas mod. So let me set up the Mac Pro, hook it all up, and then we'll do a quick test. Now this here is my test Mac. I torture this thing like nobody's business. I do all kinds of storage tests with it, testing video cards, PCI cards, all kinds of crazy stuff. Let's see. But today it will be all about the power supply. Now I'm not going to go in detail on how to take this stuff out. You can read all that on the blog. I'm just going to do it, slap it all together, and so we can move on to the actual mod fairly quickly. So bear with me. Now as you can see, this has the power supply on which I performed my very first mod. It was messy. Very messy. Cables didn't fit properly. It worked, but it wasn't as neat as I would have liked it. So this is my test power supply right now. Now before you put the card in, if you do connect the card to the board, you want to put in these power cables first, because it's a lot harder to reach once the card is in. Now this is a very rough setup. I'm not even putting any screws back in place. All we're interested in is to see if it fires up and if it produces a picture. So, display. Power. Need an adapter for that. This is the oldest display I have. 17-inch VGA. But it is the crispest picture I've ever seen produced on a computer. In. Now I forgot which hard drive has the startup system, because I do so much messing around with this thing. I don't even know if it's set up as a RAID right now, but if it even has a system, I don't know. So we're just plugging all those back in. Put some power in here. Is there a click? No click. I expect a click in these things. Let's see. There it goes. There's the click. Alright, so we got power. Drives are spinning. Power supply fan is running. And we got a picture. That is all I need to know. So let's turn this off. That is all the testing I need done right now. Now sure, if I start stress testing this card and it turns out to be faulty, that would suck. But then we just return the card, get another one. In either case, he would still need the Pixlas mod for whatever card comes next. So, let's clean this mess up. By cleaning up, I mean just toss it behind me where you can't see it. I'm not big on actually cleaning up. Okay, so we got our power supply. What else do we need to pull this off? I will tell you. You need a knife. And when I say you need, I mean there might be other ways to do it. If you want to follow my guide, this will be what you need. Knife. The cable to actually extend power to your graphics card. Some pliers. And this is strictly optional, a cable stripper. I just have it handy, so I'm not going to use my fingernails, but if you want to get some more length out of these cables, then you could just probably strip it with your fingernail. The cable is thin enough. Insulation comes right off. And what we also need, that I forgot to grab before I started this video, you also need taps. Now there's a link to all this stuff in the blog article. I even made a kit, so you can just click the links and buy that stuff outright. Got some spares in case I mess up or run out. But that's all you need. Now, of course, it's easier to do this if you have the Mac Pro in front of you. You can route the cable. You can route the cable through, and then put the taps on. Put it together in your set. I will be shipping this to another state where my friend has to put it together. So I will putting the taps on the cable before routing it through the Mac Pro. It's a little bit trickier to get the cable in place after the fact, but it can be done. So take this in whatever order you prefer. It'll work either way. So let me readjust the camera and then we can get started. Okay, I think I'm all set up. Now to show you that I really am following my own guide, there it is. The link will be in the description, or I'll do some kind of fancy pants overlay on the video. But it has the kit with all the parts you need, steps to take it apart, all the way up to the actual mod itself. So this is where we are at right now, modifying the power supply. So let's get to it. Now I know this is not the best camera angle, but if I attach the mount to this desk, it's pretty wobbly. So you're gonna get seasick just watching my footage. I'll keep it in frame as best as I can. See, yep. Now there's no need to open the power supply. You can get this cable in a longer version if you want to solder it directly in there and route it a different way. Or some people even solder in this extension cable, only a lot shorter, and then they extend that to the graphics card from behind the optical drive. Different ways to get it done, but I will be following this guide. Now first we're going to take this tape off. If memory serves, that glue is no joke. Yep. I'm not a fan of cutting this off, even though there's a plastic tab under this tape holding it all straight. The risk of cutting the cable is there, so I will just take this off by hand, even though it'll typically disintegrate as you are trying to do this. Alright, this is off. You don't need this anymore, so you can toss it. Now there's a lot of glue left on these cables that I try to take off as much as I can, and I use WD-40 for that. Some people have told me using WD-40 on plastics is not a good idea. It'll eat away at it. I've never had an issue. You can use alcohol as well. You can grab some. But alcohol is not as effective, and it'll take longer. So I typically scrape off the glue, because it'll kind of turn into a little ball as you're scraping it, and then you can just take it off with your hand. So I'm going to do that now, clean the rest with alcohol, and get right back to you. Actually, you can enjoy some tunes while you watch me do this. Now, I'm only concerned about the thick outer cables. The smaller ones in the middle, no need to clean them. You can if you got OCD, but you don't have to. Just focus about the 4 cables on this side, 4 cables on that side. That's all done. Now you can go as far as you want it, to go. I just want to get the worst of the glue off, so that's a little bit more pleasant to work with. You don't even have to remove it at all if you don't want to. Now what I like to do, you have plastic tabs underneath the original tape to keep this flat. So what I like to do is, for the center cables, the smaller ones that you don't need, I use a little electrical tape. Alright, you pick a color. Let's pretend you said green. Let's go with that. I'll take some of that. Cut off a piece. And I will put that, as you can read on the blog, around the center wires to keep them together. Now the exact positioning doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. Try not to bundle them up too much. Keep it as flat as you can. There we go. Now, as I mentioned on the blog, and I can show this with the old power supply in a second, this is not only to keep the center wires together, it also kind of serves as a guide. That once you start putting the tabs on the cable, you don't want to cross this tape. You want to keep it all in this area. And let me grab the other one. This is because if you put the tabs too high, like I did on my first attempt, you get jammed up when you put the cover plate back on behind the optical drive. This will get in the way of the screw posts, and the cables won't have enough space to route properly to the front. So if you stick to this bottom section, you're going to make your life a lot easier. So with that done, it's time to start cutting. Now, 8 wires is all you have to worry about. The ones that are wrapped in tape, you can ignore those completely. You got 4 down here, 4 up here. The ones at the bottom are ground. The ones at the very top are ground. 2 cables here. The two in the middle, on this side and this side, are 12 volts. Now for a clear marking on that, go to the blog so you can see exactly color-coded what is what, but those are the only wires you need. Now before you put the tabs on, make sure you have the right gauge. So I wrote it on this box here because wire gauge is a little confusing to me. This is 10 to 12 gauge wire. So if you follow the guide that I wrote with the parts that I used, you need the yellow tabs. Now the cable, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 cables, so you need 8 tabs. You got 8 of those. And of course you also need the part that will eventually clip in there. 8 of those as well. Check them all to make sure nothing is bent. You don't want to crimp this on, find out the connection is screwed up. Just a quick check, make sure everything is straight. If it seems bent, especially these spades, if they seem bent to one side, just use your fingernail, push them back towards the middle a little. It's not an exact science. Okay, now because the insulation on these cables is pretty thick, if you're going to clamp this on directly, close it, use some pliers to crimp it down, you might bend the metal in here, because this insulation is pretty tough to get through. So what I do is I use my knife, I cut around the cable, and then I use my fingernails to pull it apart. Just 1 or 2 millimeters is all you need to get this clamp in and ensure proper connection to the metal. So, get that done. And you can kind of feel as you move the knife around when you're hitting the metal. Let the knife do the work, don't push on it. And then just try to pull it apart. Now by the time you're done with this, your fingernails will hurt. I remember that from the other time I did this. But it's worth it. And you have to do this 8 times. Now you probably can't see it on camera, but you will be able to see it on the blog. Really 1 or 2 millimeters is all you need. Then you put the clamp around, line it up with the cut you just made, close it up loosely, make sure that you align this to point up, not sticking forward or down, up. Once that is all set, take your pliers, because you will not be able to do this by hand. Take your pliers, clamp it down. Wiggle it a little, try to pull it apart with your fingers. If it's not on there all the way, it will come apart. But this is a solid connection. Pointing up, going the right way. And now we have to do that for all the cables. So, I don't know if I'm going to make this a time lapse or just cut it out completely, but let me get this done and I'll get right back to you. One more thing to mention is you want to make sure that they don't overlap. because your cable will become twice as thick. So try to keep them all as close together as you can. You see I messed this one up a little. Not a big deal, but I would have liked it a little closer there. So do that. 3 at the bottom. So you got 2 grounds, 1 12 volt. That is because out of the 8 wires we have here, only 3 of them are 12 volt, the yellow ones. The rest is all ground. So you don't need to tap all 4 12 volt cables, you only need 3 of them. So I'm going to do 1 12 volt here, ignore the one above it, and then I'm going to take both 12 volts from the top and the ground. Now your math is probably better than mine, so you already noticed that you got more ground cables than 12 volt cables. So you have 1 too many. You only have 4 ground cables, but you have 5 on this cable, which is fine, because on the very top cable, the ground, we're going to put 2 taps side by side. Alright, as you can see here, the last ground cable has 2 cuts on it. That's where the last 2 plugs will go. Now I came down a little bit closer to the plug than I did on the blog. It really doesn't matter. It's, like I said, it's not an exact science. As long as you stay in this general area, it'll just fit a lot better when you put it all back together. And there we have it. Took a few minutes, but this is all you need. Everything is pointing the right direction. Now there is some wiggle room, so if you messed up, you can rotate these about 45 degrees without, worrying about causing a break in the cable or anything like that. So you can comfortably rotate these pretty far. If it didn't come out exactly as you want it, better luck next time. So that's the power supply taken care of. Let's scroll down in the guide, see what's next. Now the guide will tell you, put the power supply back in, then take this cable, route it through the chassis, feed it out, and put the clamps on. As I mentioned, we'll be sending this to a friend of mine that has to put it back together himself. So I'm going to put the clamps on, or the spades, while it's outside of the chassis. Now this is all the cable you get. It comes pre-cut, so you just will slide the end off and that's all you get. I prefer to double this, so you get a more snug fit in the spade. So I strip out some more. So you get a good sized piece. Then I fold that in half. Like that. And then I put the spade on. See, is that a good fit? And I forgot to get my crimper for this plug, so be right back. There it is. Let's see, I have to remember which one was the right size and which is the right side to put this in. I think this one. Nope. That one. Nope. Yeah, that one. Is it on there? Yeah, this is a solid connection. Now, I can't show you on camera, but I try to feed the cable through with a little piece of insulation as well, just so that it's a more snug fit inside the crimped area. So let's do the rest. So see if you can get a better look at this. Once I fold it around, I try to overlay it. The focus disappears as soon as I move my hand. But you see that the wire kind of overlaps with the insulation a little bit. I stick that entire piece into the spade with that little piece of insulation as well. Now it'll be a tight fit, but that is exactly what you want. And that's all of them. Not much to it, is there? Now we have done the Pixlas mod. All we need to do is slap it together. Okay, time to put it all together. Grab the Mac Pro here. And to put this in, it is easier if you lay the Mac Pro flat. Now I know that's not going to give you the best viewing angle, but again, just look at the picture on the blog and you will see everything that you need to see right there. Okay, that's about as good as it gets. So first, we're going to feed in the power supply cable. Now if you laid this pretty flat, it will fit through the slot back there. It's going to take a little bit of doing, but it will fit. That's in there. Now you have your existing optical drive cable. It's going to take away some space to feed through the cable that you want. Put in there. Let's see if I remember how this is done. Oh yeah, there should be enough space. So just keep this one out of the way. Make it a little easier on yourself. Grab some tape. Just tape that down to the power supply here so that it stays out of your way. Now in your case, this cable will probably already be in there and you put these spades on after. Like I said, I have to send this to a friend. He's going to have to put this together after the fact, so he's going to have to wire this through one spade at a time. Now if your hands are too big, you might have to take out the PCI fan as well, which I think I will do just to make it easier on myself. All you need is a Phillips screwdriver, one screw, two screws, and this will lift right out. Now you got some space to work with in there. We're still in frame. Yeah, kinda. So as you can see from the blog article, there is a very small space right down at the corner of the board where you can feed this through. Now, see if I can pull this off. Whew. Good luck to my friend. there's going to be some cursing and throwing stuff, knowing him. But it can be done. So since I'm blocking the shot completely anyway, and I will probably do some cursing of my own, let me just fast forward this or cut it out, and I'll be right back. So this is the point where you were probably already at. I just had to go do that extra step to feed that cable through. Now, let's see if I can reposition the camera to kind of show you. But it might be a very shaky experience. Hold on. Alright, we got a good view, but as you can see, the smallest touch of my desk and the camera will be wobbly. Now, to make this easier on my friend when he puts it together, I'm gonna mark the plugs. So all the plugs with a black marking are ground. And again, the layout, cable layout and all that is on the blog. But this should make it a little easier for him. Wow. Straight up Picasso right here. There we go. Now, keeping the optical drive cable out of your way while at the same time connecting these cables might be a little tricky, but it can be done, trust me. Feed the moth cable back so there's not too much in your way. And then untangle this a little. And just start connecting them. This is hard to do. See, this one doesn't fit because the spade is to one side of the plug. So again, use your fingernail to kind of get that in the middle and then connect it, which is really hard to do with a camera blocking your view. Actually, I might have to take this camera out, push down until it's all the way in, and then just keep going. Let me force focus this on the cables. And make sure that this doesn't get all tangled up, because it'll give you a lot less cable to work with. This optical drive cable is starting to piss me off a little. So we're going to tape that to the front now. There. So let's see, the closest ground cable is this one. Make sure the spade is in the middle before you attempt. Close enough. And then put it in. Now you might have to rotate the plug and push it down against the bottom of the chassis to get the leverage you need to click it in there. Alright, I tried to do this with the camera in my way. It's not working out, so I'll be right back. Alright, since I had to take this apart again anyway, because I have to ship it, I took the cable back out of the enclosure, just routed it through the outside. It's a little easier for me to put together now, because all I have to do is quickly test it, take it apart again, and then ship it out. So I wanted you to see the tail end of this anyway. Alright, all the cables are in. Now we can connect this back to the board. Now normally this would be inside your Mac, so you just route this without really cramping up the cables, no sharp turns or anything. Just loosely lay it flat, route the cable. You see that the screw posts are still clear, plenty of space around it, so the panel will fit right on there. Now you might not be able to screw it back in place, depending on, let's focus that, depending on how flat you manage to keep this. So keep that in mind. Also make sure that once you push this down by hand, nothing is jammed up, nothing is pinched, and then you're good to go. So showing you how to put that cable in did not go as smooth as I had planned, but it's not important. You have the blog for full reference. Actually, before I put that back, of course we're going to need our PCI fan back. When you put the PCI fan back, make sure that the holes line up with the posts. Because this fan, he sits in a rail that controls that bracket back there. You can see that? Yeah, we can see that. So make sure that this works before you continue. Now, we grab our graphics card. No need to worry about logic board connections right now. And we hook it up with the cable. Now this cable comes apart. Let's see if I can put that in the frame a little better. You can use this as 2 6-pin, or you can slide on this additional ground piece and you got yourself an 8-pin. Let's see. There, or 2 8-pin. This is a 900 watt power supply, I think 980 watt power supply. So if you want to run a graphics card that has 2 8-pins, have at it. This mod can handle it. So we plug in 1 8. 1 6, you got a little piece left over, just keep that dangling, and then you route the cable in front of the PCI fan and you put it away, which will of course be a lot neater when you have that cable running inside the way it should. But this is all we need for now. Let's get our display, put everything back together so we can test. Now, if you didn't cut the insulation on the power supply cables and you just crimp those things on, you may want to test your power supply first with a voltmeter. So hook everything up, don't connect the graphics card, power on the system, and then check each lead to make sure you really got 12 volts going in there. Because there is a chance that the tap didn't make proper connection because of that thick insulation. So, all hooked up, see what we got. Nope, not all hooked up. A power cable for the Mac Pro would be a good idea. So, now we're all hooked up and we can give it a test. Graphics card is spinning, so it's getting power. We got video. I think we're doing all right here. Ah, this is what happens when you rush it. You become an idiot. Of course, having a startup drive would help. Now we already saw that the graphics card is working, but I'm typically not happy until I see an Apple logo and a loading bar. Alright, now that we're out of idiot mode, let's try that again. I heard the chime. It's very soft. Look at that. Apple logo and a loading bar. Neat. That's working. Card is pushing out enough air. I cleaned this out with some compressed air before I started recording. I do still have to repaste it though. Look at that. Good to go. I have done the Pixlas mod, and you too, if you were watching this video to follow along with the blog article. And like I said, you can push any card in here you want, as long as it's supported by Mac OS, or if you're in the disgusting habit of running Windows on your Mac, this will do the job as well. You can put in any card you want, as long as your operating system of choice supports it. This power supply has more than enough power to power whatever card you put in there. You can even use two of these cables and run two cards. You can use the double 8-pin to power both cards, and put the 6-pin, if you have them, directly to the board. That way your Pixlas mod is powering both cards as well as the board. So you can mix and match, just never, in my opinion and my advice, never put an 8-pin on a 6-pin board connector. That's just asking for trouble. So, mod is done. I'm gonna stress test this with the usual applications. You got your Heaven benchmark. That'll push a graphics card pretty hard. You got your Fur mark. You got some other graphics tests you can run. Just run them all for a few hours. If you want, use an application like Hardware Monitor to keep an eye on the power draw. And if all the connections are in place properly, it'll pass those tests with flying colors, and you're good to go. So don't forget to read the blog article. It has a lot more information than I managed to squeeze in this video. And let me know what you think. If you do the Pixlas mod, post it in the comments on this video or on the blog page, because I would love to hear your experiences. But a lot of people do this mod. Well, I'm not going to say every day, but very frequently people do this mod. I've never heard of any issues. So you will be voiding your warranty, but at this point, classic Mac Pro is vintage anyway, so screw it. Hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.